Hey, hey, hey.
Hey,
Hey.
good morning.
The little tripod thing is crooked. There we go.
Get comfy.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Wave it all, y'all. Hi, hi, hi. So, do we want to start with talking about what we were just texting about?
Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah, so we're generator types, so we respond, right? And something that we're responding to today is a conversation about human design dogma, and we're just going to talk about this for a few minutes, and then we'll get into why we're really here.
Yeah. So, what are your thoughts around human design dogma, Brandy?
Oh, well, we kind of talked about, so we did an episode with a few other guests the other day talking about kind of pop HD. And I don't really have a lot to say now that I'm feeling it out, except for I think that a major part of the conversation that is lacking is responsibility. And so that's all. I mean, that's all I want to say is like when you're discussing things about one way or another way, it's like I'm passionate about responsibility, and there's no in this specific conversation about human design dogma that we were listening to, there was no conversation about responsibility. It was just everybody's perception and feelings and not emotions, feelings about things. And that's not to say that's not correct, that they're not correct, but I would just invite others, or here's something to respond to have more conversation about responsibility. Because there's no conversation about strategy and authority. And I feel like there's a big responsibility in human design, whatever you're doing with human design, however you're translating it, however you're mutating it, there's responsibility to certain aspects. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. So just for context, there was a podcast that was released that was kind of like what I'm starting to feel is these two sides, right? There's this split in the human design community. There's the people that are like, source material is the way to go. And however people express that about their passion for source material is their prerogative, right? And there's people that have spent years and years studying this system and they just want the correct information to be given. That's really what I'm feeling from that side.
Yeah.
Sure, it can come off as dogma. It can come off as like if you're inserting your own perception into it, it can come off as you're saying the system isn't meant to mutate when in fact it is. Of course it's meant to mutate. Like everything in relation to being a human being is meant to mutate. But I think it's just exactly what you're saying. It's the lack of responsibility. And a lot of people are coming at it from this space of, oh, it hurts my feelings, or yeah, it's like it hurts my feelings and this is a personal attack on me that people are saying this. And it's like, no, there's actually room for everybody here, and that's why we are all collaborating. And I'm somebody who could have considered myself like a pop HD analyst before I started really studying the source material. Absolutely. And of course it like kind of stung at first when this information started coming out. I was like, oh shoot, have I been giving the wrong information? And it was like, no, you're still on your path. Like it's just time to tweak things and make some corrections and hold yourself responsible to giving the correct information. And if I would have like responded from an emotional place to that or started like spouting my mouth off, it probably would have been very distorted and just my perception of it, instead of seeing it from an objective perspective, that there are people out there that just genuinely care and really want everybody to have the best experience with this system so that we can spread it far and wide.
Yeah, and it's designed to mutate.
Yeah, we're not arguing that at all.
Yeah.
We're basically just saying like the correct language needs to be used when giving this information, and your perception of it and your experiences are absolutely part about the way you transmit it. It's what makes people good teachers. It's in putting their own experiences and their own language while still holding the original language to, still using the original language.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think in that conversation there were some good points. I was kind of hoping that it would go a little bit more in depth. It kind of, to me, remained very surface level with things, which that's whatever, but I would have dove in a little bit. And yeah, just self radical responsibility for the system, like integrity. I think we all have the same goal. There's just some miscommunication. So
definitely. And I think there's, people, what I heard a lot was people making assumptions and people kind of putting words in other people's mouths. And it just felt like,
yeah,
I was there for all of it. And that's not really what happened.
Yeah.
Just watching from an objective perspective. So, we just kind of wanted to put that out there because I think that podcast came out yesterday or something. I don't know when it came out, but, this is probably going to be an ongoing conversation within the community, as much as I'm sure all of us would like to put it to bed, but it's the situation that we're all in. So
yeah, absolutely. So
pivoting.
Pivot. MGs. Let's pivot real quick. So today we're talking about feeling and emotion. And we had this came in to our DMs. So if you guys ever have any topics that you want to talk about, feel free to drop them in our DMs, or if you want to join us on a live, feel free to send a request. You can comment in the comments, but we can keep this open, keep this cool, as long as nothing weird goes on. I've heard some stories of people joining lives randomly, and it gets a little weird, but
yeah, don't be naked while you join. No.
Right. We use our authority when approving the request. So feelings and emotion, and the question that came in was talking about feeling cognition and the difference between that and emotions. So I'm feeling cognition, Teresa's feeling cognition, and she's also emotional. I had a really good conversation with Sam one time Sam Zagar, about feelings versus emotion and the difference in what it was. Hold on, let me grab something because I took a note so that I would remember something to prompt myself. Sam just messaged me. Sam asked me a question. Would I describe, and I'll ask it to all of you, and I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. Would you describe feeling and emotion the same? Like feeling and emotion. And I was like, wait a minute. As soon as she asked me that, I was like, no, I wouldn't. And not even being feeling cognition, but just in general, before I even knew design, I wouldn't even think of, I've never been asked that before, And so when we were talking, she was like, feeling is more like when people say, I feel this, I feel sad, I feel angry, I feel happy, I feel unsure. Unsure isn't really, you're not emoting unsureness, and then emotion being like, I am, like people who are experiencing emotion are like, maybe I am angry, I am sad, I am this. I'm undefined emotionally. Sometimes I often feel like I don't even have my own emotions. I know I do, but it doesn't feel like it all the time. But feeling cognition, it's really interesting for me to try to decipher the difference and really understand when I'm feeling something versus emoting something.
Yes. Yeah, and I think it can be really confusing when you're feeling cognition either way, like whether you're defined emotionally or undefined.
Yeah.
Because, it's like I get a feeling about things. Like the way I experience feeling cognition is almost just like It's definitely sensations. Like it's sensations in my body. It's very visceral. Like if I walk into a room and there was an argument happening in that room before I walked in, I will feel that. It's almost like, what happened in here, you know? And
Yeah.
it's one of those things where you don't, it's kind of like, I guess, what people would call claircognizant. Like you just know something and you don't necessarily know how. And I think the more you get into your design and the more your feeling cognition starts to develop, you start to get more sensitive to that and being like, oh yeah, that was this like very specific sensation in my body that I had that kind of led me to believing that or to knowing that. And emotions, I mean, for me, emotions are also visceral, but they're more like having the experience of knowing that something needs to come out of me.
Mm-hmm.
It's like something needs to release in some way, whether for, I mean, I have my solar plexus to my throat. So whether it's talking about something or I have my root to my solar plexus as well, or moving my body in some way, that it's like, it's an alert to me. Oh, I have something in here that needs to move. And I've almost gotten to this point where I don't even really label the emotions like, oh, there's some anger in here. It's just like, I don't really even care what it is. I'm just like, there's something in here that needs to move. Obviously, if there is anger towards a situation or another person and that needs to be expressed in a certain way, I might use those words. But
Yeah.
when I'm just with myself and I know that I have emotional energy that needs to move or I need to sit with it, it almost like doesn't even need to get that specific. I feel like I'm much more specific with my feeling cognition. I'm like, ooh, it feels like this and like this and like that. And like it's very nuanced.
Yeah. So feeling is, somebody mentioned it, feeling is more in the category of awareness. You know, for me, feeling is, it is more of like a, if I were to like separate parts of my body, feeling is like kind of everywhere. Like I can, you know, I don't feel emotions in my legs, but I feel feeling in them. I can, you know, I feel the sense of, you know, anybody who's feeling cognition, you know, and they have an awareness of it, you'll know what I'm talking about. Even if you don't, you can feel it's just kind of like all over. And emotions, like you said, they kind of want to come up and out. Like right now I have channel of emoting. I don't normally have that. I have gate 39 all the time, but 55 is in the transit for a little bit. And so yesterday I was very feisty, and and it wasn't like feeling feisty. I was like, I am fight. It was like, it was emotion. It was like coming out of me, when, you know, and it was like, I wanted to fight somebody all day, all day long yesterday. I kept picking fights with my husband. I'm like, I don't know. I have this, you know, this emotion trying to come out of me of fighting you. I don't even know what this is. I'm feisty. I'm this. And it was like definitely something that needed to come up and out versus just like an overarching all over. I can feel this. And with feeling cognition, that's where we, you know, that's our super sense, our spidey sense or whatever. Mm-hmm. And yeah, you can walk into a place 100 times, and then the 101st time you go to walk in and you're like, nope, I can't go in there. And you don't even have to know why. And it's not like you're emoting something into your, you know, it's more of a feeling.
Yeah, there could be no emotions involved in that situation.
Yeah.
Right. I love hearing, and I know Lori's on here and she has 3955. I love hearing other people's perceptions of channels that I have. Like, it's my favorite thing. Like when it's in the transits, I'm like, oh my God, it always helps me understand myself. 3955 often feels like it kind of reminds me of the channel of struggle, in that it almost pulses.
Yeah.
Like it's a pulse on, and when
Yeah.
you're pulsed on in it, you just you kind of want to start shit.
Fight me. I was literally like that all day. I was making cookies. Like, here's design in real life, right? Channel of emoting is pulsing through me yesterday, and I'm trying not to like divorce my husband all day long for no reason. And I'm like, good thing I have this awareness of what's going on, this channel of emoting that's just pulsing through as I'm making cookies. And he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, making cookies. He's like, oh, you know, it's like dinner time. And I was like, I'm making cookies. Fight me. Like, what are you going to do? Like, I just...
Oh, it's so good.
I kept noticing, and I would, you know, passenger consciousness, I would witness myself trying to pick fights with him. about things that don't even matter. And I'm like, what? And it was cool for me to be able to witness versus like be, you know, engulfed in that, and really like allowing those emotions to take me to places and like, you know, whip me around in the ocean, if you want to say. I was really just like, whoa, look at that, what's going on? You know, this will pass. But now it gives me a deeper appreciation for and understanding for people who have this channel. And if somebody wants to fight me, then I know, you know,
Wait, what's going on in the transits?
they're getting a little feisty.
Yeah, Emily, I think that's the difference as an emo authority, I feel, but I have no idea what I'm feeling. Yeah, and I would say like you can also look at your solar plexus, and if a lot of the gates or channels that you have coming out of there are unconscious, your emotions are going to be more of like this unconscious thing happening in the background. That's how it was for me. Like if I look at just the conscious gates in my profile, I'm like a splenic projector essentially. Not my aura, obviously, but that's how I think of myself as. I'm completely unaware of my emotions. So that's where human design has helped me so much, because I'm able to have that awareness of them now, where before I would just, it's almost like what you're describing, Brandy. I'd just be like, ah! Like not have that awareness of what's happening within myself and project it onto other people. And I think that emo authorities can have a tendency to do that if they're not self-aware of their emotions.
Yeah. So with somebody who is emotionally defined, and as somebody who's emotionally defined and has feeling cognition, before human design, did you ever feel like conflicted or didn't understand what was going on? Because
all the time
with feeling cognition and an emotional wave, like judgment for yourself and judgment for others can come in. Was that like a theme for you at all?
Yeah, absolutely. When I first found out about human design and before I looked at my chart, I actually thought I would be an open emotional or undefined emotional because of how sensitive I am to feeling things, right? It's like when I'm around somebody that's having an emotion, an intense emotion, it's like it almost feels like something's like squeezing my body. It's like palpable. So when I found out I had my own wave, there was kind of some confusion there for me because I didn't know about cognition at the time. So yeah, it's been a really interesting experience. Just also every single gate except for one in my emotional center is unconscious. So it's like my waves are almost completely unconscious. I've just had to start developing the awareness around them. Carrie, is that the title? Yeah, so if you click to the mind chart, it doesn't mean you're a projector, of course not. Like I still have generator aura, but it just means that my perception of myself could be what is defined. So I think I have my spleen, myself, my root, and my throat and mind defined on the conscious side. So I'm like unaware of my sacral, my emotional center. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Meta emotions.
Yeah. So
Definitely.
with feeling cognition, and I know there's not a lot of people, I mean, in PHS is even a thing in the human design community that some people pay attention to and some people don't, and that's your choice, you know, completely. The cognition is so important. God, I can't remember what I texted you last night, something that Ross said about cognition. No, I can't remember. This is the problem with the receptive mind. Like we know a lot, but I like don't remember what I did yesterday.
Yeah.
Anyways, so it's the top left arrow on the variable arrows, and that's your primary health systems. That's where you're going to find your cognition. And I feel like it's very important for people to know theirs. And I mean, so I'm feeling, so I don't know what touch is like. I don't know what smell is like. I've just had clients that, you know, have these and I get to experience it through their lens. But it feels like such an important thing because people won't understand why something feels as powerful as their authority. Like it's part of your decision-making process, but it doesn't get to make the decision. So for instance, with my feeling cognition, I got invited to a wedding. I was a sacral yes. to going to the wedding. Got the invitation. Okay, yes, it's a yes for me. So I RSVP'd to the wedding. And as the wedding got closer, I kept feeling like I wasn't going to go, like I wasn't going to be there. And then I kept wondering why I wasn't going to go. I also have completely open head. So it kind of started to stir up a little bit. And I was like, no, I don't need to worry. Like, I'm just going to like be present right now. I have this feeling that I'm not going to be there, but I don't know what is going to not make me be there. Leads to a lot of uncertainty. I have undefined ajna as well. And so I'm like, well, I'm so uncertain. And I got closer and closer to the wedding, and things would happen. Like, I hurt my hip flexor. I'm like, oh, is that it? Am I not going to be able to sit in a car? And nope, that's not it. And then my husband, Andy, he hurt his elbow. I'm like, oh, is he not going to be able to drive? I don't know. Like, what is this thing? Kept waiting for it to come, waiting for it to come. And then the night before the wedding, there were massive storms. The wedding was 3 hours north, and the storms were directly on the interstate, like red blobs on the interstate the entire time I would have been traveling, which was like a no for me to go. So I was presented with more information, but it was always this undercurrent of feeling like I wasn't going to go, but sacral said yes to going. So it's kind of, I felt a little bit conflicted. And what else was I going to say about feeling cognition is kind of like an emotional wave, or emotionally defined person is there's like no truth in the now, and you gain clarity over time. So they're very similar in that way of like, you can feel something and not know, and then you kind of ride the feeling cognition wave. I don't even want to say that because that's not correct language, but like there's something to be said about waiting with the feeling cognition, gaining more information and clarity, just like an emotional wave.
Yeah, well, it makes sense because the feeling cognition is because of a mutated solar plexus, right? If you have feeling cognition, you have a mutation in your solar plexus. So it still lives there,
Yeah.
But it's just a different experience.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've had really similar experiences where it's like I've almost felt like I've had these psychic experiences, right? That's what we call them. They feel like these psychic experiences where you're kind of feeling into the future, that you know something's happening. And it's like, of course, I don't know if that's what's actually happening. That's just what it feels like. You pick up on something and then you're like, I knew that was going to happen, or I knew that you were going to do that, or whatever it is. And it's very much like just getting hits. So that being said,
you can't describe it. And I would always call it hits. And I like that. Do you see the question about the defined spleen?
Yeah.
So we both have defined spleens, and hits is what I call it. It's like a hit. It's like a wham. Oh. And then it's like, it almost like hurts. Like I feel something like come into my aura, and it like, sometimes I have like physical sensation, like, oof, you know, it like power punches in there.
Yeah. I mean, I would say with the spleen, it's more of like a spleen to me feels like it's really rooted in my safety and in keeping me alive. So if I'm driving, for example, I can always feel when somebody is going to change lanes and they don't signal, and I react before I even notice what's happening. And that's my spleen. My spleen is like making me react before I even know what's happening. And its sole purpose is to keep me alive. That's what it feels like.
Is Thomas still on? He's feeling cognition. I wonder, Thomas, would you like to come on? I don't know if you want to look in the.
Yeah, Megan, I've heard that from my clients that have had touch cognition, we've had a lot of similar experiences. One with feeling cognition for me is my sensitivity to people's injuries and blood. Like ever since I was little, I've been terrible with like getting my blood drawn. I'm fine with like a shot or like tattoos, obviously, but when it comes to getting my blood drawn, I pass out every time. And if I even cut my finger and I'm bleeding quite a bit, I start to get faint. And I've always wondered what that was. And I started asking other feeling cognition and touch cognition people, and they had very similar experiences. Like, oh, it like hurts me so bad to see somebody else get injured. Or if I'm even watching a movie and there's blood and injury, I have to look away. Like my husband will always just go like this to my eyes because like he can watch it and I can't. I just lose it.
So here's an example of how feeling cognition feels, whether if you know your cognition or not. You know, when you see somebody like jump off of something and you can maybe not everybody can do this, but almost everybody I've talked to, I've like surveyed this. You can feel when they hit the ground, almost like you just hit the ground. You can kind of feel it radiate through the bottom of your feet up to your knees. They jump and you're like, ooh, you know, like you can feel it like a shock wave. Feeling cognition for me, like everything's like a shock wave. Like I'm like, woo, you know, it feels that like comes at me like somebody just jumped off of something, even if that's not true. Like I'll walk into a space and I'll feel that same kind of shock wave.
Yeah, definitely. Ash Gravity, this is helpful. I've had these experiences too, and so often people ask how I feel about something, and I'm like, I don't know because I need more info to gather from multiple sources. Yeah, definitely.
And they're confused because I seem very in touch with my emotions. Yeah, so I know what Ash's chart looks like. They are undefined emotionally. So I would wonder if you're also feeling cognition, because Ash is very highly sensitive. They're actually an astrologer that works with, specifically with like highly sensitive things. So I would be curious to see what your cognition is.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Thomas can't join us. He's feeling. And, you know, I'd like to get on here and talk about all the cognitions and have guests on that have the other ones, because I know that from my experience with other people, as far as like Sam is taste cognition, I often see her doing this with her lips and her mouth, like she's like taking in information. It's just another way that we take in information. My husband is inner vision. My son is touch. I notice now that my husband closes his eyes more. When he's like processing something, he kind of will like turn away, you know, and like close his eyes, and he's like getting more information. My son is needs to like interact with the world with his hands to like, how does everything feel? He's very sensitive to how clothes are on his skin, what his bedding, all that stuff. So all the cognitions they're just super interesting. Oh, you are feeling
So
cognition, Ash. Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. So yeah. We feel things very different or very similarly. Ash would be open or undefined solar plexus and feeling cognition. And you have, I believe you have a defined spleen. So it's a lot. Let's make a survey. All those feeling cognition. Yeah. Thomas, I just love you and all your surveys. Gosh, you're such a first line.
I love it. The surveys are great.
Yeah. If you guys on here haven't been over to the page Match My Source, you can go check it out and see all the human design community projects, and check the link in the bio. There's surveys going on about everything. We've got a lot of first lines who are investigating all the things. I have a lot of first lines in my chart, so I get excited about these things, but it's not always on my radar to like be the creator of the things. I like to talk about them.
Yeah, we like to talk and really doing it.
Yeah. It's just an interesting combination of things, and that's why I love everybody's uniqueness with it, is because everything has a different flavor. You know, we're all a different soup. All of our ingredients are in the pot. It's like, this is what my soup tastes like. That's what your soup tastes like. How do you experience the flavor of this? You know, to some people, like, you know, a seasoning might be really, really spicy. To somebody who's used to it, it's not. Let's say that is very accurate. I am not feeling, I'm outer vision, so I read a lot with just looking, and also go more off expression than content. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense, because my friend Sarah is outer vision, and she's very sensitive to like body language, and notices like if somebody's face shifts even a little bit, you know. It's not, I mean, she's open emotional too, but she can like describe somebody's body language in such detail, whereas I'm like, oh, I just like felt this from them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's a lot of conversation in primary health systems, like in the literature and stuff, about feeling cognition and judgment. because it can often come off as like a judgment of something, and it's hard to describe. And then I'm thinking, do we even need to describe it? We don't, but it's hard to describe to others when you're feeling something so intensely, or have this knowing that like, no, yeah, I'm not going in there. I don't know. It doesn't feel right. Well, why doesn't it feel right? And then you have to try to like make sense of it. And when I try to make sense of my feeling cognition, it doesn't come across very well. Just like trying to make sense of emotions. Like, why do we have to name it, label it? Why do we have to, we can give it space to do its thing, but we don't have to like participate. When I can be the observer, when I can be the passenger and just kind of witness it, it's a lot easier for me.
Yeah, I feel like naming emotions really came from needing to communicate with other people, because when I'm really, and this is just me, this might not be anybody else's truth with emotional authority, but when I'm like sitting with my emotions, I don't need to know if it's anger or sadness or whatever. I'm just like, there's a sensation here that I need to do something with, whether it's just sit with it or whether it's move or express or whatever. But I think when it comes to expressing, like yesterday I had a meltdown for like 10 minutes, and my emotional waves are quick. Like when I let them release and move through me, they move really quickly. And I didn't know how to tell my husband how I was feeling. I literally just needed him to hug me. And I didn't want any advice from him. I didn't want any suggestions, because the situation that I was upset about wasn't even actually why the emotions were living there. It was just, I had emotions that needed to move, and my brain is trying to make sense of them and try to pin them to something that's happening in my external reality. And I'm trying to describe to him how I'm feeling, but really there are no words for it, and it just needs to come out. And so he's learned like, okay, like, you just do your thing, just emote. And I was fine afterwards. I'm like, okay, off to work now.
Yeah.
Tally ho.
Maybe that's what I should have done yesterday. I was labeling and naming. I mean, because I'm not used to having emotional waves. And so I was totally like not in the passenger seat yesterday with that channel of emoting.
It's hard to be.
And you know what? Now I'm like connecting all these dots, knowing that I was like sitting there labeling it, naming it. I was in it longer. I was wanting to fight all day long.
Yep.
Instead of like just like letting it move through, allowing it to move through. But I'm feisty. It's feisty.
Yeah, well, that's honestly the mind. Like it. I mean, I'm not saying I don't get feisty. I definitely like want to fight sometimes. Yeah. But it's also like I have the language and the communication now of, oh, this is just pulsing on, and it's not actually anything that this person did. Like, if you really were to think about it, did it really piss you off that your husband asked you why you were making cookies? He was like genuinely curious, like, oh, are you making this for somebody, or what are you doing? Yeah, it's just like, get out.
Everything yesterday, nothing actually pissed me off, but it was that pulse. Like literally I would find anything to release the energy of the pulse, or something is what it felt like. Like it needed to have a name. It needed to be seen. I needed to be heard, recognized, and felt. But it was like, do I really? No.
Yeah. Wellness with Carla. Teresa, is your wave something you can actually time? Meaning, do you know exactly how long it is? I don't, because I would say they are different. I have individual waves, and then I also have the 659. So those have a different quality to them. I would say the 659 takes a little bit longer and moves through a little slower, whereas the individual waves are like boom, boom, boom. But I've never like timed it. I just feel it feels fast to me after I move things through. Like yesterday it was 10 minutes. I've had it be an hour before, just depending, And I know some people's waves can take days, like they could be in a low for days. And I've definitely been there too. I would say that doesn't happen to me that much, but occasionally like I'll get hit with a like 2-day low, and it's just kind of like generally feeling down for 2 days. Emily, mentally associate as sad so I can cry, but it's just my lack of being able to explain it. Yeah, I think emotional authorities really put pressure on ourselves to explain things. And I've recently just kind of started releasing that need to do that. Of course, my mind still wants to have a heyday with it, but it's just like I have this aware part of myself that comes in that's like, hey, you don't need to name that. Just listen to your body. It's going to tell you what it needs. And then I'm like, oh, I need to cry in my husband's arms, or I need to ecstatic dance and like move this shit through, right? It just tells me what it needs.
You just need a pin that says currently emoting. Currently emoting.
Yeah.
Like that's it. That's just what I'm doing. That's like, that's what's happening right now.
I love that. Or even like hanging something on my door because I'm a 2/4, so like I hermit in my room a lot. Just like hang something on my door. Currently emoting, do not disturb.
Yeah.
Or currently emoting, I need comfort.
Yeah. And for all the undefined emotionals that are watching this too, if you're not already looking, I mean, it's helpful when you start to feel, you don't have to know much about design or about the channels or anything like that, but like looking at the transits and seeing if you are defined emotionally during that, and just being like, oh, this is just moving through me. This is just something that I'm experiencing. I mean, just like people who are defined emotionally, but I think undefined emotional, it's abrupt. It's more like, what is this? This is not me, then people might start to dive into like, what's wrong with me? Or what do I need to fix about myself? Or what do I need to work on? When literally it's something that's just moving through that we have no control over.
Mm-hmm.
But having the awareness of, oh, okay, I want to fight people. This is not my normal. Okay, I'm going to just have this awareness. Because that's all human design is. It's about having an awareness. I mean, you don't have to like do anything.
Yeah, definitely. It's just having that objective perspective and witnessing yourself have these experiences, whether it's something that's in your system consistently all the time or inconsistently, because yeah, that's really just the only difference is it's consistently you. It's something that you can identify with experiencing all the time, or it's something that you're amplifying that's just kind of visiting you for that moment. It's almost like you're like, get out of my house. Like,
yes.
Who are you?
Yeah. Yeah. And above all, with both feeling and emotion, honoring it all, honoring it just honoring it. We don't have to try to make it go away. We don't have to try to explain it to people or even to ourselves. If something doesn't feel right, that's okay. If you're having an emotion that you can't name, that's okay. Just put on your I am emoting pin.
Yeah, I am emoting.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the language that feels good for me is just saying I'm in a low.
Yeah.
I'm in a low, and nobody asks questions now. They're not like, why? Or, I've had to kind of train my family. Obviously the people I live with are aware of design and understand this stuff, but my family, like people who aren't really into design, I've just explained to them very simply, we all experience highs and lows. This is something that I experience all the time. It's just a part of my human experience, and I can't necessarily come and be social if I'm in a low. And if I do, just be aware that like this is where I'm at today, and you don't need to worry about me. You don't need to ask me what's wrong. You don't need to try to make me explain it. So now it's just people know.
Yeah, and communicating too for people that don't have an understanding of design, and that low isn't bad,
No.
Like there's this like, oh, you're low, you're feeling low. What do you need? How can I get you out of this low faster? What do you need to do to get out of this? And sometimes you just have to be in it, but being in the low of your wave doesn't always have a negative connotation. And for somebody who's unaware of the language, that they might think something's wrong with them. My husband's an emotional, and his lows before he had awareness of them, would last a long time, and he would be like, this is I think what depression is, and so he'd go through these and then he'd be back up, and I'm like, I don't actually think I don't know if that's depression. I don't know what that is. I'm not certain because I'm not you, but and then once he started having an awareness in it, he kind of, those lows don't last as long, and then he doesn't feel like he has to name them or call it depression. I mean, depression exists, all those things are real, but how much can we release from ourselves when we're not trying to name each part of the wave and diagnose it and get lots of other people involved in the wave, like, oh, I'm in this low, come help me out of it. It's like, just
let it be. Yeah, just write it out. I love that that you had that awareness of for him, and that he could start to have that awareness, because it's so helpful to not try to like have to figure it out. And I think we try to like self-diagnose ourselves a lot. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like we were saying, their mental health issues are 100% real, but I think sometimes we can jump to conclusions and think that we're broken or there's something wrong with us. And not that if you have mental health issues that you're broken in any way, but I don't think anybody's broken. I think that we all are just having an experience in our bodies, and whatever is helpful for us to label that. Like sometimes a diagnosis like that is really helpful for people. For me personally, like I've been through all of that and it wasn't helpful. And so I've gotten a way of just like changing my language and learning how to phrase things in a way that feel correct for me.
Yeah.
And yeah, when I label something as like, oh, I'm in a depression, there's almost this like something attached to it. And now I'm having to figure out why I'm in a depression, or maybe I have a chemical imbalance or something like that. But in reality, it's kind of just like, no, it's just like my body chemistry. And like you said, it doesn't last as long for me now.
Right.
Before, my mind just made it like drag on because my mind is trying to figure out what's happening. Or now I'm just like, nah, it's just a low. Here I am. I'm accepting of it. I'm not resistant to it. I'm not fighting it. I'm not feeling like I need to explain it to everybody and their mother. And I'm just allowing it to be.
Yeah, same thing with when the wave starts, because, well, the emotionals in my house, they get nervousness, which in like another name might be anxiety, and so they'll be like, I have anxiety. And it's just like the beginning of the wave, that nervousness. And I'm like, oh, and then they're like anxiety, then depression, and then it goes. And I'm like, I don't know if like you actually like you experience it like this, so I don't know if it's anxiety. And then once I learned about emotional waves, I'm like, oh, that's nervousness. That's a little bit, that means your wave is about to kick off again.
Carla, and yeah, that was a really good point. Have you noticed the actual definition to the solar plexus has something to do with the wave? For example, I only have 4130, and identifying the one feeling helps me transition through my wave. That's great. Emily Already Divine also has the 4130. So I have the 30, but I don't have the 41. So I kind of understand it. Whenever I get activated there, I can see what you're saying. I've found, at least with clients that I've read for with the 4130, there's almost this experience of disappointment and expectations not being met. And that's what can send you into a low. So I feel like for the 4130, that could be really helpful to be like, oh, I feel sad that this person didn't meet my expectations, and that's what sent me into my low. But now I'm just experiencing the low, and it's like, you don't need to make any more sense of it, if that makes sense. But of course, like, do what works for you.
Yeah, and that's where that's where like all the parts of our design kind of work together to help help with that, to help move it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and what you were saying about like the whole anxiety piece of it, I think there's like there's two sides to this. There's people that are like literally experiencing PTSD from trauma and that whole side of it. And then there's the chemistry, design side of things. So not to combine those at all. These are like very different subjects, but I do think that before I had the language for design, I would just kind of jump to calling it anxiety, especially as somebody with a defined spleen. I don't know if I feel like this also might be kind of a splenic thing, is feeling like the fear anxiety, because the spleen kind of reminds me of like a security guard that's like walking around and telling me what to be aware of, and like, you need to be aware of this, and this isn't safe, and and my mind can easily take what the spleen is communicating to me and like throw me off a cliff with it, right?
Yep. Oh yes, absolutely. And I think it's interesting too, knowing people's designs and like what is like their circuitry, and understanding even when you just mentioned like PTSD, because it's like something that was like pulsing through, it's so intricate. I don't need to go there.
It's very intricate. Have you do you notice it with 59.6, the intimacy helps you transition? Yeah, so one thing I've noticed with 59.6, thanks for asking that, Carla, is touch. really helps. So that's where yesterday when I was just like, ah, I just needed my husband to like hug me. And it made it so much better. It was like I could feel my nervous system just like relax. There's like that co-regulation that happens. And I'm sure that can be helpful for people with Alpha 59.6 as well. But that is very specific to that wave that touch helps us process.
Yeah, the two emotionals in my house, both of their waves, touch helps them. And I was like, I think I said this in Rave ABCs in class. And I was like, they can just touch each other, like hug each other. Like I'm a non-emotional because I don't understand it like they do. I get little flavors of it when the transits move through, but I don't understand it. So I'll be like, oh yeah, and I get it. But then I'm also like hugging and I'm like, I want to like know more. I want to like, but I'm like, yeah, go hug each other.
Yeah, go hug it out.
Go hug it out. Yeah, because that's a lot of times too, when people are experiencing things and they're some of these emotional waves don't want to be talked out. You know, they don't need to be talked out because sometimes when you talk it out, then you kind of like create more than is necessary, but they actually just need touch. And I noticed that because I'm a big communicator with my family, with my two emotionals that don't want to talk it out. Before I had an awareness of their design, I would like force them to talk it out with me and it would get worse. And now I'm like, don't talk to me at all. I'm here to love you. And that's all I need.
Yeah, it's just wanting to understand it. I'm going to send Thomas a request real quick.
Thomas will join us, living my design. He's feeling cognition as well. He's a 5-1 MG, pure MG. Hello.
Thomas, hello.
Hi guys. Just want to share a little bit of my feeling cognition.
Yeah, we're here for it.
Yeah, because I have the fifth tone in my environment and in my awareness, and what I experience is like I just try to make some sense out of some certain experiences I had. One was experience when I have shaky hands in when I'm around a lot of people, like having this emotional wave. And this is this kind of nervousness that's and I just wonder if this is some phenomenon that other people's also got with this feeling cognition, because what I see is it is also like electromagnetic, you know. This is a lot about electromagnetics and either being around like, I don't know, Wi-Fi and all that stuff, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I have lots of things in my house, too. I have a thing called a somavetic. It's supposed to help with EMFs. I'm highly sensitive to EMFs. I'm highly sensitive to...
Same here, yeah.
Oh.
I can't even stand in front of the microwave if it's on. No. Like, I have to be far away from it.
Yeah, and I actually, our microwave is in our garage because I can't even like have it in the house. I'm like, my family thinks I'm crazy, but I'm like, that microwave needs to be far away from me.
I've felt that way too before with it.
Yeah, so this is kind of feeling. You feel the electromagnetics, right? You know?
Yes.
Definitely.
When it's too close, when it's too much, when the frequency of these waves, electromagnetic waves, is too much for your system, right?
Yeah.
Like highly attuned to frequencies in general is how I feel. Like I can notice a shift in something, and it's like it's very palpable to me, and like other people, maybe they're different cognition. It's not felt the same.
One other thing I just want to mention. I mean, when we say we have an open solar plex like I have and you have, Brandy, it doesn't mean actually that you automatically feel the emotion of the other people. It just means when someone is emotionally defined, he or she defines your emotional center, but it's not their emotion like per se. But I guess when someone is also feeling cognition, then it's another game. I mean, what I just experienced in recently when I have this, like people who are emotionally like having really a strong emotional wave, I can kind of cling to this wave that they have right now and let it through me and it sucks, like it gets away from them. I had to sometimes where I just live out this emotion from them, I make myself open for that experience and it's gone for them. they don't have this emotion anymore, and I have that. So
Yeah,
it's something that, yeah.
like absorbing it.
Absorbing it, yes, yes.
Thomas, do you find with your open emotional center that when somebody else is having emotions and they're telling you like what's wrong and you can feel that there's more and you're like, but that's not the thing, but I'm not here to tell you how you're having your experience, but like it feels like there's something under that actually is the thing. And so it's kind of, yeah, I get on this with my husband. He'll be like, no, it's fine. I'm like, no, I can feel that it's not.
Yes, 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 yes.
I can feel it. And if we don't talk about it, I feel like it's not going to go away from my aura.
Yes, 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 absolutely, 100%.
I love hearing the open ESP perspective of emotional waves.
Yeah. And I think it's not the same with everyone who has an open solar plex. I think it's a lot about cognition too.
I think so too, yeah.
Well, like was mentioned before, the feeling cognition is in the solar plexus, so it's kind of like a whole thing.
It's a whole thing.
It is.
Awesome.
Okay. That was it.
All right. Well, I'm feeling complete. If you guys are feeling complete.
Yeah.
All right.
This is a great talk. Thanks for joining us, everybody.
Yeah. And if you have any more comments or anything you want to discuss further, feel free to drop them in the comments here. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, if you have any topics that you particularly want to talk about, Teresa and I are both receptive minds. We've got a lot in there, and you know, oftentimes it's better to have it prompted out. And we're MGs. We need to respond to things. So topics that you have, send us a DM. If you want to join us on a live sometime, we'd love to have you. If you're a different cognition, I'd like to go through all the cognitions with people sometime. So this is an open invitation and giving you guys something to respond to.
Yeah, that'd be really fun. And if you are a generator type, a generator or MG, we are teaching a generator class mid-July, July 15th. The link is in the bio to sign up for that. It's really to help y'all integrate, because I'm finding that a lot of generators are confused with the whole respond versus initiate versus wait for the invitation. So it's like we have some generators waiting for the invitation and we have some generators initiating, and it's just confusing. So we really want to help you guys integrate that and share our experiences and just kind of go deep into that. So we'd love to have you.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye. Bye.